Welcome to episode 14 of the Necronama.com. Today, we're going to talk The Shining, the Stanley Kubrick version. There's a few versions. There's even an opera version. No, really, that's real. Go look it up. Oddly, Stephen King likes the opera version a lot more than he likes Stanley Kubrick's version. Horror fans, not so much. We love the Kubrick version. It may not live up to the novel, as we'll discuss in this episode, but it's still fantastic. While Stanley Kubrick's masterpiece was filmed mostly on set, the exterior shots were from the Timberline Hotel in Oregon. But most Shining fans are drawn to a completely different location, one in Estes Park, Colorado. The Stanley Hotel has been a haven for horror fans. It's even hosted the Stoker Awards. It was this hotel that inspired Stephen King to write The Shining after staying there one night in 1974. King and his wife Tabitha were the only guests, but Stephen King wasn't convinced that they were alone. Maybe he was right. Over the years, every single room in the hotel has reportedly experienced something strange, from clothes being mysteriously unpacked to items moving on their own, lights turning themselves on and off. There's an entire floor where people claim to hear children giggling and running about. However, it wasn't anything supernatural per se that inspired Stephen King to write The Shining that night. As he lay there in room 217, King dreamt that his 2-year-old son, now author Joe Hill, was being chased down the long halls of the Grand Hotel. That nightmare would feature heavily in the book that Stephen didn't even know he was going to write yet. But that trip has become legendary for inspiring The Shining, but also for revitalizing the Stanley Hotel. The Stanley now attracts thousands of people every year. Maybe one day you'll be one of them. Maybe you'll even stay in room 217 and sleep where Stephen King slept. Maybe, if you're really, really lucky, Stephen King will be a guest while you're there. What? What did you think I was going to say? I am James Sabata, horror author, screenwriter, co-host of the podcast you're listening to right now, and giant fan of having hotels all to myself.
And I am Don Guillory, author, historian, co-host of this podcast, and definitely somebody who gets creeped out if I happen to be in an area of floor of the hotel by myself. Just check out my Instagram where I was in China and the floor was completely vacant.
Yeah, that was kind of creepy.
Yeah.
Jesus.
You know, the shadow that was crawling towards me, from the other end
back
of the
up.
hall
Just tell him the whole story. Let's start there. Just tell him the whole story.
Okay. So I went to China this past summer to teach some history courses at Sichuan University in Chengdu, China. And I went to the gym early one morning. I think it was like 6 or 7 o'clock to check out what they had so I could come back later. I go downstairs.
I had no idea that gym is the Chinese word for brothel. That's amazing.
So anyway, dick.
All right, go ahead. I'll be good for a little bit.
Yeah, cut that shit out.
All right, tell your story. I want to interrupt.
Take 2. All right. So anyway, I go downstairs. The entire floor is supposed to be like the spa gym. So there's like the spa where you go get, people can go get nails and hair done, massages, foot massages, the hot tub, the shower, steam room, all that cool stuff, and the gym, ballrooms and stuff. There was no one there. And I think I said 6, but I really think it was probably like 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. No one was there. It was completely quiet. And I just looked off from down this seemingly endless hallway. And there was just this shadow at the end. So I made sure to take a picture and send it to people just in case some shit happened to me. But yeah, I did not go back to that floor for a while until I made sure that there were other people on it.
The best part was when I got the photo from you, there was like no context. It was just like, what the fuck? And a picture of a hallway. And I was like, what is going on? Good times.
Look, so I made sure to leave China with all my organs.
Well, I mean, that's better than some people. All right. So I don't know why I said that. All right. So we're here to talk about The Shining, which is why we're talking about hotels and being alone. So the first time that I saw The Shining, I don't remember most of it, but I remember the naked woman in the tub, and not for the good reasons, because I don't remember the attractive woman that he's first hugging or whatever you want to call it. I remember the other side of that and the horrific horror that's actually occurring. And I couldn't even tell you how old I was, but I think I was probably 9 or so, and it scared the living shit out of me to the point that I never wanted to see this movie again. And then I didn't watch it again until I was probably in college. And when I saw it that time, it became like one of the almighty films to me, and now I've seen it way too many times. How about you?
I would probably say the same with respect. I can't remember the first time I saw it. The pieces that stayed with me were, of course, the twins and Jack's son, like Doc, riding his tricycle, or his, for me, I thought it was a Power Wheel at the time when I was a kid, riding it through the hotel. And I'm just thinking to myself as a kid, like, this would be badass. I could just ride everywhere inside the house with this, just go wherever the hell I want, jump down the, because when you're a kid and you see that, you're like, man, what the hell would I would be jumping off the stairs. I'd be fucking stuff up. But, it was that. And of course, the iconic, here's Johnny scene where Jack Nicholson's character, Jack Torrance, tears through that bathroom door with the axe. So, for me, I didn't think about what the film meant or what it could possibly mean. I didn't think about how abusive of a father and a husband that Jack's character was. A lot of that didn't make sense until I got older and I watched it and, listened to the way that he talked about his family, or talked about his son and talked about his wife, and talked about, his responsibilities within life. But this is one of those movies that, because I just watched it again this past week, and it still holds up. There's some things that growing up in that time period still makes sense to you, as far as the technology and the idea of not being able to make phone calls out of the hotel because the lines are down or there's storms. Because I've lived in a part of Colorado where we had blizzards and the electricity would go out because power lines would snap because of ice and or just any random event that leads to tree branches or something breaking off and knocking power lines down. But it's one of those things that when I watched the film, I could imagine being back there in the 1980s, having all that stuff take place and being stuck. Because when I was in elementary school, they didn't even send the buses for us because of how bad the roads were. But the crazy thing is, you were still expected to go to school.
Wow. That's such a problem in the Midwest. Like, even where I grew up, if it's, there could be a massive blizzard, but hey, kids should go to school. It's so weird. And then we'd have like a snow day when there was like 1/8 of an inch on the ground because they were like, oh, we haven't used enough snow days. I guess we should take a day off.
Mm-hmm.
It's so crazy. Also, is there anywhere you haven't lived? Because I feel like every episode I'm playing Where Has Don Lived bingo. I'm like, oh, Colorado. Now I just need Connecticut, But no, you
not
brought up
bingo on Connecticut.
Not yet. But so you brought up how Jack talks about his wife and his child. And I think that that's a really good place to start because there's so much going on there. And on one hand, it's kind of a product of the time. And on the other hand, it's extremely problematic. And it's also very symbolic of, just how there's that whole conversation like, is Jack already evil or does the hotel do something to him? And I think if nothing else, it really lays the foundation for the kind of person he is, just listening to him talk about his wife from the very beginning. So I know you mentioned it before we came on to record this. So would you like to talk about that a bit?
Yeah, of course. Well, to piggyback off of what you brought, well, I guess what you introduced, I'm of the camp that Jack was always a piece of shit. And he just continued to descend into madness because there's that conversation that he has with the waiter, the butler, where he starts harassing him and about being there and his delusion or whatever. And the butler then says, "Oh, no, sir, you've always been here." As far as this idea of, at least for me, the way I'm reading it, this idea of his own madness, he's always been that way as far as a horrible human being. It's just he's trying to clean it up and pretend like it's not. But, there's this moment where he goes into the bar. His wife has made it clear at the beginning of the film that Jack doesn't drink anymore because there was this one incident where he grabbed Doc, the son, by the arm and yanked him, dislocated his shoulder. And after that moment, she made sure that he wouldn't drink anymore, and he pledged not to drink anymore. And it's only been 6 months since that incident. But he goes down to the bar, and early on in the film, you learn there's no alcohol in the building because the people who run the hotel say, hey, we make sure there's no alcohol here because it's cheaper for the insurance during the off season, which for me, I'm thinking like, what the fuck is the difference if alcohol's there, if no one's supposed to be there? It makes no difference. It shouldn't make any sense with the insurance. But I don't know, maybe late 1970s, early 1980s insurance law was written to where if there was a bottle of alcohol, apparently your premiums were up like 20, 30%. But when he's down there, he has this delusion where the bartender shows up and he refers to his wife because he's talking about he wants something to drink, but he's not allowed to drink. And, as he calls her, the sperm bank upstairs won't let him have a drink. And just the way he talks about his wife, if you refer to your wife as a sperm bank, you have no respect for her at all. Absolutely none. And it also is an indication to anybody who's watching this that this is not a guy who should be respected or regarded as a hero or liked in any way, because at that moment you can kind of excuse, okay, well, maybe, he was drinking and he grabbed the kid too hard, but you're starting to slowly see how he is a piece of shit, and he's not teaching. So there's kind of this question of why is he really not teaching now? What else could have possibly been involved? Is a story that he's telling you a false one? Was there some incident that had him removed from the classroom to where now he's going to be writing or focusing on his writing now? But for me, I had no respect for the guy, and I didn't like him at all. And I was just waiting for that iconic scene. And I will say, spoiler alert first this time. Spoiler alert. Where it's at the end,
Shinning, come on.
Yeah. Where at the end, he's fucking freezing outside. And I'm just sitting there waiting. I'm like, yeah, let's get to the fucking end where he's just out there freezing to death because, he's a piece of shit. And I just want to see him die. So
I feel like you set me up by using a certain word in that because you said hero.
Maybe I did.
So in case you guys don't know, Stephen King's book version is slightly different than the film. Like pretty much the entire thing, to the point that in the book, the hotel blows up and becomes fire. And in the film, everything's covered in ice. So we're talking very, very opposite ends of pretty much everything. And in the book, well, Stephen King has said one of his biggest complaints with the film is that Jack doesn't have an arc. He doesn't feel like there was a character arc, and it never gets better. He said, when we first see Jack Nicholson, he's in the office of Mr. Ullman, the manager of the hotel. And then that he's crazy as a shithouse rat, which I think is a great term, by the way, shithouse rat. That's what I'm calling our next podcast. All he does is get crazier. In the book, he's a guy who's struggling with his sanity and finally loses it. And to me, that's tragedy. In the movie, there's no tragedy because there's no real change. King went on to say that he wrote Jack to be a hero of sorts, that Stephen was drinking so much at the time and identified so much with this character that he was trying to make some kind of hero who would overcome all of this, or at least be on the path to overcome all this before losing it. And then that's the tragedy, that he fails when he's finally making this attempt. And so I feel like I agree that that's completely ignored in the film, obviously. But at the same time, having read the book, I don't know that I can agree that Jack's ever a hero. Maybe I wasn't Stephen King, so I don't get it. But my question to you is, how do you feel about that? Have you read the book? And if so, do you think that it's... Oh, okay, cool. Great. That really just kills my next question. So we'll skip that.
No, it doesn't. You don't know that. You don't know that. I might just lie to you. I
was going to ask you if there's an arc. But yeah, go ahead.
Well, that doesn't kill your question, because at least with King's argument that Jack is the hero, even that argument I don't buy, because it seems as though he's trying to force him into being a hero. Because, yeah, if somebody's struggling with mental illness, and, any of us that are or know someone who is, you definitely, sometimes there is no improvement. Sometimes there is no change. You might want to improve your status or improve your mental health or make some changes in your life to be more accommodating. But as far as the way that Jack's character is in the film, which is loosely based off the one in the book, it doesn't seem as though he's making a valiant effort to make any changes. Kind of like, you have to, this is the way I am. You have to accept me. This is the way I'm going to be, deal with it. And somebody, at least in his, of his mindset, is going to make that argument. If it's, I'm drinking too much for you. Well, fuck you. I'm just fine. There are a lot of alcoholics and addicts that's their perspective of no, my drinking isn't a problem for me. If it's a problem for you, fuck you. You don't need to be in my life. And at least in this film, you get to see how somebody is trying to cope with, addiction or their own mental health and try and figure things out. But they start to succumb to what that is. And there are a lot of cases in which somebody, has bipolar disorder, anxiety, or depression, and it just becomes one of those things where they start beating up on themselves even more, and then realize, what, fuck everybody else. I'm going to do me. I'm going to take care of myself. If I want to have a drink, I'm going to have a fucking drink. If you don't want me to have a drink, well, too bad. I'm going to have one anyway and just deal with it. And just hoping that, at least there is no pushback from anybody. And for that matter, Shelley Duvall's character does not push back at all. She seems to expect him to change, because even if this isn't a mental health issue, she just expects him to change. But I think that she's so beaten down as an individual that she just accepts that the idea that he might change, and she's not going to push too far because, she's his wife and the mother of his child. So he's going to listen to her, or at least take her advice when it comes to a lot of different things. And he shouldn't fight back with her. But you see how he kind of gaslights her as well. It doesn't even seem clear that she wants to go to this fucking house, this hotel.
No, I don't think that she does. I think she's just along because that's what she's supposed to do.
Right.
And poor Danny gets dragged along as well.
They never address this, but fucking, they at least have this discussion when he's being interviewed for this job, and this hotel is not made for skiing and resort life and all that stuff. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But he's bringing his kid, because I'm assuming Danny, from his appearance, would be in at least kindergarten, if not first or second grade. And there's nothing that's addressing the fact that this kid should be in school.
Yeah, they don't even bother
it's supposed to be
homeschooling
what,
him or anything.
November to May or something like that. Yeah, there's no addressing it. It's kind of like, oh, I'm watching TV in here. You want to watch TV with me? Oh, you want to go play? Go play. All right, let's go to the maze and let's walk around in the maze. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, shouldn't this little kid be in school or doing something? Even if you're homeschooling him, which was a thing back then, it still existed back then.
Yeah,
shouldn't you be doing something with him if your dad happens to be an English, because he was an English teacher, right?
Yes.
And sitting down with him, reading a book, talking about symbolism, metaphors, something. But it just seems like, no, we're going to have
teaching him basic phonics, anything.
We can't have an episode that includes a black person without me talking about black people in horror movies.
Ooh, we're going to talk about Doc. That's exciting.
You mean the cook?
Well, there's Doc as well. Doc's black. Is he the cook? I don't know. I thought this out too?
No, Doc was Danny's nickname.
Who's Dick Halloran then?
Wait, hold on a second. Let me go back on here. Okay,
Dick Halloran is Doc.
Cutting it from 1930.
I'll find it. I just have to be able to find it. That's all I care about.
Hey, Dick Halloran. That's what it was. That's why you're thinking it was Doc. Danny's nickname is Doc and it's Dick. So
I literally didn't know Danny's nickname was Doc.
Cup. You want to know how I knew your nickname was Doc? I got the Shining. I could tell you could shine too. I'm like,
it's a good thing he named him that so later he could be Dr. Sleep.
Oh, James. All right. So anyway,
continue.
Let me start this over. Boom. All right. So, we can't have a black person in a horror movie without me talking about some of the black tropes, caricatures, and all the other stuff that comes up in these films. So there's the one character, Dick Halloran, the cook, that I found out today was actually the voice of Hong Kong Phooey, and I'm very embarrassed that I didn't know that. And those of you who just found this out, you're welcome. You're welcome to the 1974 classic dog janitor who turns into a kung fu master cartoon series. But
I definitely already knew this and did not learn it right before the show when you told me.
Oh, okay. Well, welcome. For not being a new learner on this. But yeah, the character Dick Halloran, I liked, but I didn't like at the same time. Because even though I watched this, and I barely remember anything about the film from when I watched as a kid to the time I watched it as an adult, I'm thinking to myself, like, this dude's going to get killed at one point in this movie. Because in my head, I'm thinking, well, it's already too far along to where he can't be killed in the beginning. So something's going to happen to where, he's going to try and help the family. He's going to show up and get killed, at least for his trouble. And Dick Halloran, serves two purposes in this movie for me. One, he's the magical Negro. And then two, literally, he's the magical Negro. And then two, he's a sacrificial Negro, which is, he serves in both capacities. But
can you explain both of those terms to our listeners?
I got you. The magical Negro is that one black person that has some magical ability that helps the story go along, right? The sacrificial Negro is that one black person that ends up dying in order to save the white family. In Annabelle Origins or Annabelle, whatever the one that was supposed to be the backstory before they came up with Annabelle Creation, it's Alfre Woodard's character where she basically kills herself in an attempt to kill the Annabelle doll, but it doesn't work because she's trying to save the family. And in all honesty, if you've seen the movie, that's pretty much the only purpose this woman has is she gets attached to this family and then she kills herself trying to kill the doll. And there are numerous examples of this through different types of films. I'm sorry, not just horror films, but different genres of film. But in this film, you see where Dick's character is the cook. He has this attachment to the family. He starts talking to Doc or Danny. You hear the narration, you hear the voice. And Danny's trying to figure it out. And, they have this connection known as The Shining, in which Dick starts talking to him about his talent. Says, oh, I could tell, some people can shine, but, a lot of people hide it and people don't acknowledge that they do it. And there are a lot of people that don't know they can do it. And so you're thinking like, all right, great. Now they're going to be cosmically connected for the rest of the movie. And I'm going to be distracted by that. So what's going to happen is Danny at one point is going to send some emergency beacon to where Dick Halloran shows up and tries to save the family, which is what ends up happening. You know, Dick starts checking in on them. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, why? Why? Because I think in the book, he survives. He doesn't die in the book, if I'm correct, right?
No, he does not. He's possibly still alive in any sequels that were written as well. So I'm interested to see how that works out.
He's probably going to be a ghost. Hey, everybody, you know that axe that was buried in my chest? I didn't actually die. I had my Bible protected me, because they'd have to make him super religious as well.
Oh, yes.
You know, even if they were to update it, they're probably going to have him in the movie listening to Kanye's new album talking about, I'm a follower of Christ now that I listen to Yeezy. Or Ye. I'm sorry, not Yeezy. That's a different guy. Since I listened to since I listened to Yeezus, I know what the plan is. But no, it's frustrating because you start watching and you think this guy is going through all the steps. He's not even in the freaking hotel. He's all the way in Miami, Florida, which I'm going to be honest. If I have The Shining and I'm all the way in Miami, I'm not coming to help you.
But it's winter in Colorado. How could you possibly resist?
But here are all the steps he goes through. He gets The Shining, has the nightmare, calls the ranger station or whatever the fuck he calls them and says, hey, there's a family up there. I'm worried about them. Oh, don't worry about them. We have radio contact. And we got all. So I would have been like, all right, fuck it. I did my job. I called people. Danny, look out. I called who I needed to fucking call. But this dude flies all the way back from Miami to Colorado during a winter storm. And this is the other thing that bothered me. He asked the fucking stewardess what time they land. They tell you when you fucking land. Excuse me, stewardess. What time are we supposed to get into Denver? Oh, 8:20. Oh, okay. Thank you. I'm like, God damn it, dude. They fucking tell you every update when they're going to get there. So anyway, God damn, pilot wouldn't do his job.
That wasn't a service that they offered in the 70s.
Yes, it was. It's been there forever.
You don't know.
Like, you know what? We might be there tomorrow. Who knows? So anyway, he lands in Denver, calls his friend who works at, some gas station or some service station or whatever, who has access to the cat paw or whatever it was, the snow cat, calls him and says, hey, I'm going to rent a car from the airport and I'm going to come up there. And since I can't get through the roads, I'm going to get one of the snowcats from you. So make sure you got a snowcat. This motherfucker drives through the goddamn snow on a snowcat all these miles from the airport to this hotel because he got one fucking emergency call in his head. I'm like, at that point, I'm just hate watching the movie because everything is frustrating me about. And plus, I know that in the book, he lives. So I'm thinking, like, it's like, why does Kubrick have to kill him? You don't have to kill him in this movie. It makes no sense. You could have it to where he gets there, the axe is swung at him, Jack loses his balance, and I don't know, he gets hit in the arm and cuts his arm or something, but you have to fucking kill him?
Wouldn't it be great if he showed up and Jack had the axe and he was just like, oh, hell no, fuck this shit, and just walked out? That
would have been a better thing, like, oh, shit,
somebody
Danny,
should cut that version. That would be amazing.
You didn't tell me he had a fucking axe. I'm a cook. I'm not trained for this shit. Something. But anyway, that part frustrated me because it was that kind of trope of he has to die. He has to live. And Apollo Creed's trainer is his friend who gives him the snowcat and he gets up to the hotel and he ends up saving them because Shelley Duvall's character and then and Danny, Wendy and Danny, they end up getting in the snowcat and leaving, and Jack Nicholson freezes to death. So, he ends up saving him, but he goes through all these steps. There's so many other things that could have happened. But anyway, enough of that spiel and that spiraling thought that about why I don't like the character Dick Halloran. I don't like the direction that the movie took at that point. But, you mentioned that whole idea about solitude or being alone. And what's interesting, I don't know if they're directly addressing this. Now, they're addressing it as far as the cabin fever, at least the excuse of cabin fever that's given by the guys who run the hotel when they're talking to Jack. But the whole idea of, for some people, that solitude up there would be scary enough.
Oh, yeah.
You're by yourself. Yeah. You're by yourself, and he used the excuse of, I'm going to have 5 months to where I can just sit up here and write. I can focus on, my work and come up with my novel. All these great, well-intentioned reasons for being there. All he has to do is make sure nothing goes wrong with the house. That's his only job.
I'm thinking about, not to discount what you were just saying, but going back to Dick for just a second. I was thinking about how in the book he gets them out of the hotel, and then the hotel basically, is in his head, and it's like, you need to kill them and you need to do this, and it's like it's fucking with him. And I kind of hate that we missed that moment, because that really pushes how the evil of the hotel is using people, and
right.
and instead that's completely ignored.
Him mentally ill.
Yeah. And while I like Kubrick's version where you don't know what's happening and you don't know which one's right or which one's wrong, I don't think that you had to include that to still get Dick out of there okay. The only thing I can think of as a writer is that he killed him so that they would have to try to save themselves without some outsider doing it. But that's pretty flimsy. Like, you make a guy come all the way across the country just to not be able to do stuff. There's a million other ways they could have ended that.
He was basically a glorified delivery man because he brings the snowcat up there. That's it. It's kind of like, if you did this in 2019, it would be kind of like, well, fuck it, I'll call an Uber for you.
Right.
That would be the equivalent, because it just makes no sense. Well, I'm sorry, it makes sense for him to go up there, but it's one of those things of, there are so many steps that he goes through for this family that he has no connection to other than the kid having the same gift that he has. And, even thinking, when he gives that whole thing about, some people don't acknowledge that they have it and some people don't respond to it. I'm thinking to myself, like, you know what? Why don't you do some Shining in your private time, or at least turn it off when you're supposed to be vacationing in Miami and just enjoy yourself? Because I'm sure Dick was going to the beaches and, with a pair of sunglasses and staring at women, probably a quarter of his age. But,
Man. So back to your isolation thing really fast. Number one, I feel personally attacked. The idea that I could go somewhere for months and just concentrate on my novel, that sounds fantastic. And all I have to do is take care of a house. I mean, that'd be really easy for me, because when I write, I don't leave the room I'm in, so I don't even have to clean that much. But no, the isolation is so big, and I think that they do a really great job in this film of portraying isolation. Even if you go to Duvall's part where, she first finds out that there's supposedly someone else in the hotel, the way she reacts to that is interesting to me, because while the isolation can bring horror, it's also how did anyone get in here? We're isolated, so it works in both directions. And I really like how Kubrick used that throughout the entire film. Even when they're in the maze, the isolation is being stuck in this one part and not being able to see all of it, not being able to get out, that sort of thing. So, I mean, isolation is constant throughout the entire film. Even at the beginning, when there's other people, they're talking about how isolated it gets. So, I mean, I don't know that isolation is a theme that's used a lot, and I don't know that anybody else has ever really gotten it on this level, where you can use it in so many different ways and truly exploit different types of horror out of it. It's usually lock onto one side and just do that the whole film, Right. So that's one thing I really love about the isolation in this. Yeah, there you go. I got nothing now.
No, I was going to say, and the thing is that works for me, and you definitely hit the issue as far as you're isolated. You're supposed, then that fear of being by yourself, but then that fear becomes worse when you know you're by yourself, and then all of a sudden there's somebody else there.
I mean, that's terrible.
Yeah, and the thing is, I've been in that situation several times where I'm in the house by myself during the summer. My wife and daughter are off visiting family for for the summer while I'm working or just here by myself, and just these random ass noises that will occur, and combining that with the fact that there's a graveyard behind my house, sometimes do think that somebody's probably paying a visit, and a lot of times it's not a damn thing at all. But if someone were to walk up to my house, 9 times out of 10, first, I'm not going to answer the door. But if someone were to walk up to my house and I'm trying to enjoy this solitude, this alone time, your personal space becomes violated. And even if you're alone in public, which is, one of my favorite things, put on a pair of headphones, you're sitting at a desk or a table in the library working on your stuff, you're there by yourself. But as soon as somebody breaks that seal, breaks that layer of protection that you have, you don't feel safe anymore. And that's kind of what at least what I got from Shelley Duvall's, excitement and frantic experience in having somebody else in the house, or feeling that as though someone else is in the house. And even the way she described it, she said there's a crazy woman in one of the rooms.
Could it be the room she's standing in?
Yeah.
I love
paraphrasing. Just that whole idea that somebody's there and there is no layer of protection between you and that person. There's no wall. There's no window. They're there with you. And the same thing, even with traffic, because there was this book that I read in college. It was Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. And we were debating this whole idea because the guy goes on this road trip with his son. And it's kind of almost the same thing, where it's kind of like a layer of abuse with the son, or at least a lack of connection. So that's why he decides to go on this road trip with his son in the sidecar. And he talks about why he did it as by motorcycle as opposed to a car. When you're in the motorcycle, you're closer to nature. You can feel the wind. You can feel it blowing in your hair. You can get off the bike and touch the ground, or it easily, descend the bike, as opposed to the car. You have all those barriers that are built up. And with those barriers, there's that safety that you have within the car. So even if you're in traffic, crowded traffic with, dozens of other cars around you, the fact that somebody, you roll that window down, you're no longer alone. Any random person can walk up to your car. They walk up to your car where you got the window up, you have that safety, you have that security. The window's down and you're vulnerable. Even though it's just a quarter inch of glass, you're vulnerable at that moment. Were there any Easter eggs in this movie? Because I've heard before and even looked for I guess Stephen King Easter eggs in movies that are connected to him, because I think it's Among the Tall Grass. There are a few things that are included in that film. There's different connections and Easter eggs and connections to other books and films. The one with Johnny Depp, where it was like this, oh gosh, where he plays the writer and he actually kills his wife and puts her in a cornfield. There's all these connections between these different films. Were there any Easter eggs in this film?
So the number one that I would go to, at the very beginning, Jack is reading Playgirl magazine. Not Playboy, Playgirl. And I find that fascinating. There's a very interesting theory online that I'm not going to get into too heavily here. But one of the headlines on that particular issue of Playgirl is why parents sleep with their children. So, how's that for an Easter egg? Outside of that,
so this gives some, I guess, a hint to some of the theories that Jack was possibly sexually abusing Doc.
Yeah, Yeah, and it's supposed to explain the Bear Man costume and all that as well. I don't want to get into the full theory because the guy who did it did a ton of amazing work to put it all together. But let me pull up his page so that I can at least tell others where to find it. Give me 1 second while I do that. But another Easter egg that I always thought was interesting was the part where he keeps writing "all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy." The lines actually change. There's typos. Some of the words are different. One of them is makes Jack adult boy. Things like that. But I found it interesting how we all just accept that it's exactly the same when it's really not. So that's a good Easter egg. Sorry, I'm trying to think of others. One that I've heard before, and I don't know, I don't have it in front of me, I can't tell you for sure, but was that Jack's tie at the beginning is like a green color with like a weird maze on it, and that it supposedly either lines up with the real maze or it's like reminiscent of the maze or something like that. So that's kind of a cool, thing if it's true.
I saw some theory where the carpet is supposed to be, I guess, some hint towards something, as far as the pattern that's in the carpet of the hotel.
Really? I knew in Toy Story, in Sid's room, he has the same carpet as The Shining. So that's an Easter egg in a different movie going back to The Shining. But I hadn't heard that about the actual Shining carpet. So that's fascinating. The guy I was looking for with the molestation theory is Rob Ager, Ager. And he's got a YouTube video about it that's probably 20 minutes long. He's got a full article he's written, really just impressive stuff. And normally I would just bust through and tell you all his theory, but in this situation, having written extensive papers and theses and whatever else, I don't want to take any credit away from him. So go look up Rob Ager and go read his theory or watch his YouTube channel, because it's a great theory, even if you don't buy into it. It's just really well done. But so those are the big Easter eggs I can think of. The Playgirl I noticed forever ago. I didn't notice the headline, obviously, until the Rob Ager stuff. But yeah, I always thought, I was like, wait a minute, what's he reading? And is that supposed to somehow play into everything that's happening? Or was it just like some weird thing they threw in? Is it just the only magazine that's out there? So he thought, hey, why not? I don't know.
All right. I got to talk to you about the twins now.
Twins, Basil.
Now, here's what creeped me out about them. The two twins that the iconic twins from this movie, or the twins that are iconic from this movie, are creepy for several reasons. They're by themselves in the hotel, and there's a theory among Black horror viewers that the scariest thing in a horror movie is a little white girl by herself. Now, imagine it's two little white female twins. That shit is scary. So watching this as an adult, I'm thinking like, man, fuck them kids. Nope. I don't care what you kids. I don't even, if you say there's a monster in here, you need to help us. I'm like, nope, not happening. But what's scary is, it goes along with kind of that trope within Black culture about, the one little white girl that happens to be in the elevator by herself, or down the hallway, or outside outside your house. There's this kind of understanding like that's the scariest shit that there is. Like you can have a Klansman that's outside, holding a noose, burning a cross. I'm going to be more scared of the little white girl than I am of the dude in the Klan robes. Because I know what the Klan guy's there for. I don't know what the fuck the little girl is there for. There's some shit that could really go down with her. But the fact that it's twins, which is even creepier, and shout out to my mom and my Aunt Gloria, who are twins, because, they're scary. But the idea that they're speaking with British fucking accents.
So that they're even more out of the ordinary?
Well, it's one of those things that I asked one of my professors back when I was in college. Why is it in all these World War II movies that you have British actors playing Nazis? And so when they're playing the Nazis always have a fucking British accent. And I asked her, I was like, Doc, why is it British people get cast to play Nazis? Why is it like they don't even try having a German accent when they're speaking? And she said, without batting an eyelash and very matter-of-factly, because the British accent is a lot more evil.
Huh.
A British accent, considering the way that it might, whatever's being spoken, it can sound condescending. It can sound evil. It can sound dastardly. It can sound, it can sound there's never a moment, of course, there's always the whole thing. If somebody says it with a British accent, that sounds so much smarter. They sound fucking diabolical. If I ask you in Americanized English, do you want a Coke? But then I ask you in the same phrase with a British accent, I don't know if this is a proposition to actually have a Coca-Cola, or you might have poisoned the fucking drink that I have, and you're asking me to actually take it, inquisitively to see if I'm going to take the bait and end up drinking the poison. So I don't trust twin girls with British accents in a movie. Not happening.
Huh. I didn't know that about you.
Look,
I think I know everything.
No, I have a celebrity crush on Tandy Newton, but her fucking British accent scares the shit out of me. I love Tandy Newton. I love Naomi Harris, but their fucking accents scare me. Because I'll see him in one movie and then all of a sudden it's, oh, yes, I love being at the Academy to accept this award. I'm like, oh, she's going to fucking kill somebody.
Wow, that's what you think British people sound like?
Well, that's how Tandy Newton sounds. My wife knows my 5, and Tandy Newton is on my list of 5, along with Helen Bonham Carter. So,
nice.
Won't tell you who the other 3 are.
We're never going to talk about mine.
Yeah, not going to tell you about the other 3 because, got to keep some things to myself.
There you go. So now that we've gone down this very strange path, so back to little girls being scary. I mean, it's definitely not just a black thing, as you inferred. It's an ongoing horror trope because
it's black people. It's worse with black people, man.
I'm not saying it's not worse. I'm just saying it's not universally just them. But
can we have anything, James? Can we have anything, please?
No, I'm taking it back. All right, so. It goes back to like if I'm writing something and I put a giant monster, everyone knows to be scared, right? But if you put a little girl, then she could be a symbol of innocence, and then you move her location and suddenly she's creepy as shit. When she's somewhere she shouldn't be, or somewhere that you don't know what she's doing, then she becomes creepy. And that's what I really like about the trope, because it's not like you can take Godzilla and put him somewhere where he's not intimidating, but a little girl, you can have such a complex storyline just based on where she is and why she's there. Also, I don't know about you, but little girls in my mirror are like one of the scariest thoughts in the world to me. Like my entire life, I've had that fear. Like you watch horror movies and you see like the ghost is standing right behind you. My fear is always that it's a little girl. It's never like some old dude or like a decomposing zombie or any of that shit. No, it's just little girls staring at me. And so now I have this almost 5-year-old. and I know that at some point in my life it's going to happen. And that actually terrifies me more because sometimes I like walk into the bathroom waiting for it to happen while I'm looking in the mirror. So my point is I might be more terrified of that than you are.
Well,
bring it on.
If your daughter speaks in a British accent, so.
Well, she doesn't so far. She has been watching a lot of Peppa Pig. So she does, like she says, strawberries instead of strawberries. So she is on her way there. It could happen.
All right. Note to self: this child is never staying over at my house.
That's all right. I don't have The Shining. not traveling halfway across the country. So, so back to this movie, because none of our listeners give a shit about this. Uh, really fast. I wanted to go back to Jack and in the book, how he goes out. So I told you that the hotel blows up and it's engulfed in flames. Jack sacrifices himself. He goes to the boiler room and he causes the boiler to explode because he's turned that much that even though he failed and even though the Shining is basically controlling him, he tried to stop it. Right. And I think that could be where King gets the hero nonsense from. I still think it's too late. Like, I think it's more of a like a cowardly bullshit way out, but that's me. I don't know. But I wanted to bring that up because I forgot to say that earlier. So there you go. So where would you like to go now, sir?
Ooh, let's see. We've discussed the abuse. You know what? We can go back to this whole family dynamic because we covered it, but we didn't get into depth about it. The 1980s, I mean, this is the end of the 70s, I guess, and beginning of 1980s as far as when the film comes out.
Yeah.
But what gets me about this film, let's see. Yeah, actually, yeah, it comes out in 1980. So you're in that transitional period from the 70s and 80s, and you had the women's lib movement in the 60s. You have women entering the workplace. More married women entering the workplace in the 1970s, and you also have this religious right movement or this new conservative movement that hits in the late 70s that's making this argument that women should actually return to the home. They shouldn't be in the workplace because their kids would be neglected, and if their kids are neglected, they're going to end up becoming drug addicts and criminals and all other types of shit. Just because they believe that, the households themselves, both at least one parent should be at home all day waiting for the kids in case they need something, as if society will crumble if both parents are working. But that's the kind of thing that I got from this film was there's this expectation with women, maybe not intentionally by Kubrick, but more an issue of it's a product of the time and demonstrating what the time was like, that Jack's character, the Jack Torrance, the character accepts this gift, but that the wife and the family are supposed to go with him. There's no other option. She's not going to get a job. She's not looking for a job because Jack, I guess, has this expectation of he's a failure if he can't take care of his family by himself, and his wife can't stay at home to take care of their child, or at least be at home for their child when he would be coming back from school, which he apparently doesn't do. So even this idea that she doesn't have a place to speak up against her husband, and even the idea of her fighting back, it's awkward. When she finally grabs the baseball bat and tells Jack to get away from her, to leave her alone, she is so struggling with this idea of fighting back against her husband to protect herself and to protect her son, which, in 2019, there's still, people that deal with that problem as far as fighting back against their abuser. But I don't know if it will be represented the same way, because when she grabs the bat, it's as if she had never picked up a stick in her life, because the way that she's swinging it. And those of you who watched the film, she's just very awkwardly swinging the bat. And anybody who's watched it would easily say, if she was swinging that bat at me like that, I could easily take it away from her. But Jack's character isn't even threatened by her. She's picked up this bat, she's swinging it at him, and he's just kind of like, oh yeah, what the fuck are you gonna do to me? Just kind of has this attitude of like, you can't fucking do anything to me. You're weak. You're a piece of shit. You can't do anything to me. So why are you even trying? And then she whacks him over the head and he falls down the stairs, and she half freaks out about, oh my God, I hit him. What do I do now? and then she does run for safety. She tries, and she drags him into the dry goods locker and keeps him in there. Which for me, I'm watching this like, man, this is her moment to actually become free of his abuse and free of this monster that he's become. And it seems as though at that point she's still trying to struggle to get her own, not even her own identity, but at least figure out a way to live without this guy. Because even when he's in the dry goods locker, he's sitting there saying, like, hey, if you lock me out, if you let me out, nothing's going to happen. I'll let you out. Let me out. And I promise I won't do anything to you. But at least she's smart enough at that point. Like, I'm not going to let you out because I know what'll happen if I let you out at this point. You're not the same person anymore. You're actually going to do something to me. But for me, I just wish if they were to remake this film, because, there's so many things that get remade and readapted and rebooted, that they would address that issue even more. Not necessarily that she has to be such a stronger character, but I felt like they spent so much time showing how weak she was. They didn't really give her much of an arc to where she could have shown that she was stronger. Kind of like there is that moment where Jack you see where he starts off and where he starts to descend, to where she would have been weak and had this point where she ascended, or even possibly address the whole issue about who Jack really is, and this whole idea that maybe he is sexually abusing his child, as well as physically abusing his child.
So we're almost out of time, but I am fascinated by how much of this will make it into Dr. Sleep. Like, I know they recreated some of the scenes, which look really cool. And, I know the story of Dr. Sleep, and so I wonder how much they have to adjust it to make it a sequel to this, like they've said they would, and how much will play off of the book. I think that I don't know what you know about Dr. Sleep, and I don't want to ruin it for anybody out there, but I think that the film at least does some great things to set up a couple things that they didn't necessarily have to include and will now play in really well with Dr. Sleep coming out. I unfortunately will not get to see Dr. Sleep for at least another week. So while I want to do an episode on it soon, it won't be next week, because this weekend I am at TusCon in Tucson, Arizona. It is a sci-fi horror fest, and I'm doing several panels there. And my hero Jonathan Mayberry will be there, so I'm excited. Get to do a panel with Autumn Ivy, who is always great to be around. So it should be a fun time. So you'll get to see Dr. Sleep way before me, Don. But I will try to see it as soon as possible so that we can continue this conversation.
Don't worry, I'll tell you the whole movie and then yell spoiler alert once I'm done telling you all about it.
I am the one person that doesn't matter with, so that's fantastic.
You don't care. So.
If you do it with anyone else, they might hurt you.
Yeah, that was literally my childhood. It's like, there's this part in Star Wars where Darth Vader tells Luke he's his dad. Oh, you haven't seen it yet? Okay, then he cuts off his hand and then he falls down. Yeah.
Speaking of childhood, next week we're going to look at one of how
it works with me.
We're going to look at one of my favorite films from my childhood.
Long enough, I'll ruin a movie for you, one way or another.
That's true. So, speaking of childhood, next week we're going to look at one of my favorite movies from my childhood, Edward Scissorhands. And I'm super excited to do that one. So, hopefully we can get that out sooner than we did this week, since we totally didn't make it on time.
Isn't that a ripoff of that movie, Paul Penis Fingers? Isn't that so?
The Dick Fingers movie that you're in reference to, actually, Tim Burton has like the best quote about it. And he's like, I was severely disappointed with this film because I thought there would be 5 dicks on each hand and there was only one. And I don't know, that's just such a great response from Tim Burton. So
note to James, cut that part out.
No way.
Cut that part out, or I'm going to have to hear about it in my gender and feminism class. We were listening to your podcast, and you Peter Penis Fingers. Yeah. We did a Google search. I'm like, God damn it.
How far are we?
104. Like, it was probably like 103 when we mentioned the penis fingers thing. Penis fingers. Penis fingers. Tally record.
Are you done so we can end this?
Okay.
All right.
And
so
even though James has his awesome events at the conventions and everything, I have nothing going on other than school, and I'm still living in Mississippi. So guess what, motherfucker? You can't scare me.
I really thought we were going to make it through the whole episode. I was trying so hard not to point it out. All right. So we will see you next week here on the Necronama.com. As always, I am James Sabata.
And I am Don Guillory. We will see you next time.